Over the next 10 minutes, I'd like to share with you a vision for the future of finance and the role that you're going to be playing in that and the steps that you need to take in order to get there. So it was about a year ago, right before the pandemic struck, that we issued a study with CEOs around the world. And we asked them, what percentage of their revenue do they expect to see coming from digital products and services? And you can see they said in 2020, they were expecting it to be about 26%. By 2025, they were expecting it to grow to 46%, which seemed pretty significant of a jump in such a short period of time back then. But obviously, as what we just were talking about here, things have accelerated quickly. And I thought a nice point there to illustrate it was what we heard Macy's CEO say on their Q3 earnings call. They said that their digital revenue was about 25% in 2019, and it's expected to go to the mid 40s in 2020. So that's exactly the compression that we've seen go on. And FedEx has also put out their forecast for e-commerce volumes and how quickly they're going to be tripling. By 2026, they're expecting those numbers to go to 111 million packages per day. So for organizations to reach this type of revenue coming from digital products and services, they really have to undergo business model transformation. And so we see a number of different business models that are being explored and being used by organizations. These happen to be probably the four most common ones that we see organizations focused on. The first two are really platform-based models, one being an open platform where what businesses are doing is they are taking their core products and they are putting them into an ecosystem for ecosystem partners to connect to and really enhance the value one would get out of that product. You then have another flavor of that, which is really a co-innovation platform where they're putting their assets into the ecosystem with the intention that people will co-create around that. And then you have the as-a-service models. And you, under one of the popular ones is what Larry was talking about, is this idea of taking assets, making them more affordable, making them more flexible by making them on demand. And then some organizations are even looking at their data and looking at how they are able to create a data insights as a service. The point here is that whatever model we're talking about, they all have massive implications on the finance function. So the as-a-service business models, they require new approaches to revenue recognition, forecasting, and cash flow management. And then these platform-based business models that involve the ecosystem partners, they're going to require you to account for shared revenue models. So what no organization can afford to do is really to leave finance out of that new business model conversation. We're also expecting to see finance release and start to develop and track new KPIs for the digital enterprise. From your peers, these are some of the more popular KPIs they believe that they need to develop. Number one being sustainability related KPIs, things like carbon adjusted earnings per share or some other carbon footprinting metric. And then of course, we're gonna need to have new KPIs around the volume of these digital services and digital channels, whether it's the number of transactions or the number of interactions. And of course, ROI is not gonna go away, and we're gonna need to have ROI metrics around the digital products and the digital services. So really what we're seeing is the need to transform the role of the CFO and the role of finance and move from being a scorekeeper to a coach. And what I mean by that is that finance is shifting from recording transactions and reporting on what has happened in the past to applying predictive techniques and automation tools to analyze the insights in real time. Now, in order to get to that position, finance now needs to transform itself. And this is data that we actually just pulled in last week. It's from a C-suite study that we did in Europe and North America. And we asked C-suite executives which functions need to be transformed this year in 2021, especially with this idea that you have to leverage technology to transform it. And you can see right there that finance is at the top of that list. So as a senior financial executive, you're going to really be leading that transformation of your organization. So how do you do that? Well, What you want to do is you want to put together a series of use cases, business use cases about that transformation. Now, what you're looking at here is you're looking at IDC's digital transformation use cases for the finance function. And what you'll see down the left-hand side are hopefully familiar looking competencies of your finance function. And then to the right of that, you'll see use cases. And now these are what we see as an analyst firm as some of the biggest use cases other finance functions are deploying. So your job is to figure out which one of the competencies you want to transform first, second, third, and then to put together a roadmap of what those use cases will be. Now, as this relates to cloud, what we're seeing is that organizations are using cloud as the foundation for this future enterprise. And we were chatting with one of our CIO clients in a manufacturing organization, and I thought he explained it really well. He said, for them, the move to the cloud was the foundation. And now the focus for them is to take it to the next level and to digitize all the areas of the business by building on that cloud foundation. And so with all the acceleration that's happened this year, we absolutely are seeing an acceleration in the adoption of cloud and also the thinking of cloud as this foundational element. In fact, we've just recently put out a prediction at IDC, and that is by the end of this year, based on the lessons learned last year, we expect to see 80% of organizations a shift to cloud-centric infrastructure and applications twice as fast as what they were doing before the pandemic. So how does this relate to ERP and SaaS-based ERP? So what we see that organizations are doing, and particularly in the finance function, is they are moving into SaaS-based ERP. And one of the benefits that they're getting there is that they're able to get access to innovation. So when you think about your SaaS applications in finance, you're going to be looking for innovations like predictive analytics, machine learning, RPA, just to name a few. And so this idea that you can get that access on a regular basis and really have this kind of minimal IT involvement and management overhead associated it, that's why we see other organizations continuing to invest in SaaS. So as you think about this, I encourage you to think through some key questions. One is you're really going to be looking at how to take those manual processes in finance and how to use your ERP software to automate them, right? So you're going to need to think about to what extent do you need to automate those business processes? Then you'll want to think about what are some of the new software-based innovations that you can leverage in your organization, whether it's RPA or machine learning. And then you do want to consider this integration factor as well. Your finance function and your finance app is not going to stand alone. You're going to need that to integrate with your supply chain planning, with your CRM, and a whole host of other applications in the enterprise. So factor that in. And then last, I recognize you're all from different industries here. So you all have industry-specific considerations. You have industry-specific compliance that you're going to need to address. And so it's going to be important when you're talking to the SaaS provider to ask them about your industry-specific needs. So I know there's a lot to do in 2021. I wanted to boil it down to 3 things that you should focus on. One is this idea of relentless automation. Look at what are those processes that are consuming resources from your team and keeping them from really moving to being that coach in the organization, and look to automate them. The second is head down this path of evolving finance from being a scorekeeper to being a coach. Focus on how can you create those real-time insights for the organization. And one way to do that is really to put the back office into the cloud so it frees up your team's time. And then third, as I stated at the beginning here, we can't leave finance out of the business model innovation discussion. So if your company has not involved you in that, get yourself involved in that discussion right away, because you're really going to be able to help them innovate faster by being involved early on in the discussion.